All right, welcome to Hoops Tonight here at The Volume. Happy Saturday, everybody. Hope all of you guys are having a great weekend. I'm actually recording this episode late night on Friday after the penultimate night of the NBA regular season. Basically, here's what we're going to do in today's show. I'm going to go over a few of the games from last night, a couple of the things that I noticed, and then we're going to look at both the East and the West and what we know about the playoff picture going into Sunday. We obviously have some more clarity out East. I'll talk very briefly about those first round matchups. Obviously, we're not going to get into too much detail until next week. I will have comprehensive breakdowns of all 8 first round series during the week next week. Obviously, a bunch more up in the air in the Western Conference. I'll be going over scenarios for you guys. I'll talk about which matchups I prefer for all of the teams. And not too much Lakers talk for you Laker fans today, but at the tail end of the show, I am going to go over just a couple seeding scenarios, which I think are valuable for Laker fans. But again, just going to dance around the penultimate night in the NBA regular season and talk about everything that we learned and everything that we need for Sunday. You guys know the drill. Before we get started, subscribe to the Hoops Tonight YouTube channel so you don't miss any more of our videos. Follow me on Twitter at _JasonLT so you guys don't miss show announcements. Don't forget about our podcast feed, wherever you get your podcasts under Hoops Tonight. It's also super helpful if you leave a rating and a review on that front. We also have social media feeds on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook where Jackson's doing great work this year. Make sure you guys follow us there. And then last but not least, keep dropping those mailbag questions so we can get to them in our weekly mailbags throughout the rest of the season. All right, let's talk some basketball, and let's start out in the Eastern Conference. So the Bucks get a big win on the road in Detroit. They clinch the 5 seed and make Sunday's rematch with the Pistons completely unnecessary. Giannis was incredible in this game. He goes for 15 assists, his 5th double-digit assist game in his last 7 games. And tonight, it was just this surgical point-forward playmaking piece, semi-transition attacks, getting the defense to lean one way or another and making great cross-court and skip passes or swing passes to shooters, finding cutters on the baseline, post feeds to Brook Lopez again, post double team kickouts, handling blitzes and traps well, just methodical playmaking. And obviously the blood clot for Dame is very scary and you'd prefer that he was healthy and ready to play. But this opportunity that has opened up in terms of ball handling responsibility for Milwaukee has been super revealing on a bunch of levels. On the one hand, Kevin Porter Jr., to his credit, has developed a decent little two-man game with Giannis. They're good at screening and rescreening and doing what it takes to get one of the defenders out of position so that they can create some of those short roll opportunities for Giannis. They got one of those in the second half tonight for a little swing pass to the weak side for, I believe, a Gary Trent Jr. 3. Opportunities for Giannis in the pocket as they run that two-man game. Kevin Porter's found some scoring opportunities in there, working against ice coverages along the baseline, giving goes with Giannis. They have a nice little chemistry that they found there that I think they're going to end up potentially having to lean on a lot in their first-round series if Dame is unable to come back. On the other hand, that opening in ball handling responsibility has just given the ball to Giannis a ton. And there are a ton of possessions where it's just Giannis bringing the ball up the floor in semi-transition, and he's just playing basketball, making a quick attack to see if the defense does something, dribbling into a post-up to see if the defense does something. Just a lot of really nice, methodical playmaking from Giannis. And it's not the old school Giannis 5 years ago, bull in a china shop stuff where he's just dropping his shoulder and trying to go through everybody. He's attacking slowly at times. He's putting guys in jail, meaning trapping them on his backside and methodically waiting for plays to open up. He's manipulating help defenders with his eyes and with ball fakes. Again, it's not a coincidence. It's not easy to put up 5 double-figure assist games in 7 nights the way that he did. That's something that we usually only see from the top-end playmaking talent in this league. And I just think that that's a very interesting trend for the big picture for Milwaukee, in the sense that it used to be that you felt like you needed a Dame because of Giannis's half-court shortcomings. You needed Chris Middleton because of Giannis's half-court shortcomings. And I'm starting to think that it's worth a shot, at least in terms of team building, if Milwaukee wants to try going this route this summer, or if a team were to trade for Giannis. I think Giannis is at a caliber as a half-court playmaker now that you can start looking more towards 3-and-D type of talent off of Giannis. Athleticism, defensive talent, trusting that Giannis is going to be able to set them up with enough quality opportunities for you to be able to score. I think that's a real growth piece in Giannis's game. That's an exciting big picture trend for the Bucks, especially as they potentially have to head into a pivot, like a soft rebuild this summer. Our Eastern Conference playoffs are officially set, or at least for the teams that are not going to play play-in teams. We're going to get Milwaukee versus Indiana, with Indiana having home court, and Detroit versus New York, with the Knicks having home court. Now, obviously, as I mentioned, we're going to do our comprehensive series previews next week. But here are my very, very brief initial thoughts. For Pacers-Bucks, this has at times been a tough matchup for Milwaukee, although Milwaukee's fared much better this year than they did last year. And obviously, Dame being out makes for a ton of responsibility on Giannis, and then obviously a lot of pressure on some lower-level guys to knock down a lot of shots off of Giannis passes. And so my initial gut feeling is to take Indy. Indy's playing really well right now. They have more, they're obviously in a better position in terms of health. They have, their identity is really clicking right now on both ends of the floor. But Giannis is playing so incredibly well that I'm really going to have to think long and hard about this one, and I'm going to spend a good amount of time watching film. And again, I'll save my prediction for next week. I'm leaning Indiana right now, but Giannis has me seriously second-guessing that. New York is a better matchup for Detroit than Indiana is. Detroit really struggled with Indiana this year. They actually beat the Knicks 3 times in a row. Cade has looked super comfortable attacking Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns in action. But obviously the Knicks have a lot of experience and talent, and I would just flat out say they have a more well-equipped playoff roster than Detroit has. So my initial gut feeling is to take the Knicks there. Obviously the young, inexperienced team too, a star that's never been in the postseason before. There's a lot of question marks there. But New York does have advantages there. The Pistons do have advantages there, and I could see that series getting dragged out based on Cade being able to operate in a bunch of comfort and just him just being able to be in a groove for most of that series. But again, my initial gut feeling is Knicks and Pacers, but we will have our predictions next week with our comprehensive previews as we go through all 8 first-round series. Who's scoring big in the NBA this season? You are, with all of the new ways to get in on the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. From monster slams to dishing the rock to cleaning the glass, get behind your favorite players and the prop bets you can make on DraftKings, the home of NBA player props. Ready to place your first bet? Try betting on something simple like picking how many points your favorite player will have. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app and make your pick. The Oklahoma City Thunder have pulled away as a substantial favorite right now on DraftKings to win the title at plus 145. The Celtics, if you believe in them, they're all the way up at plus 215 right now. Some interesting value there. First time, here's something special just for you. New DraftKings customers bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets instantly. Take it to the rack with DraftKings Sportsbook. Every point counts. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code HOOPS. That's HOOPS. That's code HOOPS for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Moving out to the Western Conference. The Clippers took care of business in another must-win game on the road in Sacramento. Their defense was incredible all night. Kawhi basically erased DeMar DeRozan. Chris Dunn and Derrick Jones Jr. did a great job on Zach LaVine. They had balanced scoring across the board. Their big four went for 84 points. Got a little squirrely late. Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan finally got hot, hit some shots, and the Clipper offense stalled out a bit. They had a couple late-game execution mistakes, including turning the ball over on a sideline out-of-bounds sequence. But credit to Ivica Zubac, who created 2 extra possessions on a critical late-game possessions just by bullying Sabonis underneath the basket and creating tap-out rebounds, and they ended up scoring on that possession. The Clippers were able to survive this kind of crazy late-game sequence with that turnover and DeMar DeRozan trying to split a double team for Heave, and they end up getting out of there with the much-needed win. So now the Clippers controlled their destiny on Sunday. If they beat the Warriors, they will get the 5 seed and a date with Denver in the first round. After I get through these couple other things from tonight, I'm going to go in detail through the Western Conference seeding situation. That's going to be at the tail end of the show. But before we move on to the next games, I wanted to take a minute to compliment the Clippers on what I think has been a very successful season for them and what I think was a really smart gamble by Lawrence Frank and that front office. Letting Paul George walk is not an easy decision to make. He had just played in 74 games. He had a very good season. 23 points per game, 61% true shooting. That's a lot of talent to let walk out the door for nothing. But there were obvious realities with the CBA, and the way that you can handcuff yourself if you end up in that second apron. And so the organization just believed in their strong basketball culture. They have a smart front office, and they made a couple of moves last summer that I think should teach us all a lesson in roster building in the NBA. This was something I talked a lot about at the time. The idea of this perimeter speed, finding athletes on the perimeter to make life easier in the regular season. And it kind of fits into a concept I've believed a long time, which is essentially that your talent is unique to what your team actually needs from you, right? So, okay, you can't get a superstar player in free agency, right? You let Paul George walk. You don't have the cap space to just sign a superstar. There wasn't really anybody available. But what if you can get players that are such seamless fits into the roles that you have available that you can get great value? For instance, Chris Dunn and Derrick Jones Jr. total at just $14.6 million per year in salary. But because you have the ball screen game with James Harden and Ivica Zubac, Zubac's development as a player in the pocket with this deadly floater, hit several more super important floaters tonight. That game with those two has generated a lot of low man help, a lot of situations where guys are having to tag Zoo. When they tag Zoo, that leaves the corner open. And so they've been able to generate these like pretty simple reads for their 3-and-D guys out of that fifth starter. He's basically going to cut along the baseline if there's enough of a runway. We saw a key one out of a late timeout late in this game where they ran a ball screen for James Harden going towards the left wing, knew the tag was coming because Zoo had done a bunch of damage there with floaters, and James Harden, instead of throwing the pocket to Zoo, just throws a lob to Derrick Jones cutting out of that right corner and gets a nasty two-handed dunk. Again, that is the type of runway that develops because of the Harden-Zoo two-man game. They're going to get clean catch and shoots and clean runway cutting opportunities out of that corner. And so as a result, you get two players for $14 million that, because they're also guarding the other team's best player and pressuring full court and doing all this stuff to make them uncomfortable, you're getting great value. And maybe not an exact approximation of what Paul George does, but you're getting so much more offensively out of what Zoo is doing and out of what Norman Powell is doing through their internal development that you don't necessarily need the offensive firepower. And now Derrick Jones and Chris Dunn are actually kicking ass in these smaller roles. And so it just has been a masterclass in roster building in the NBA. I've talked about this emphasis on perimeter speed and guys that can really guard the ball and how that raises your floor in the regular season. I talked before the season starts how I expected the Clippers to be a team that hung out above the play-in for the most part, and they did all the season. They just have a great basketball culture, a great front office that understands the game and how to build within the confines of what your payroll can trap you into. A head coach that I think is among the best in the league. A couple of really, really smart stars leading the way. Kawhi Leonard continues to look fantastic. He's looked so much more athletic towards the rim. He keeps trying to dunk on everybody now all of a sudden. Like, it's looking really, really exciting for the Clippers. And so here we are. You hit on those two signings, and I believe the Clippers are a better basketball team today than they were with Paul George. So shout out to the Clippers. Again, we'll talk about some more stuff with the seeding when we get to the final segment of the night. But before we get out of here, welcome to Course Correction, brought to you by Microsoft. Just like star players and teams navigating performance hurdles, business decision makers today are under immense pressure to get things right. They must rise to the occasion, turning challenges into opportunities. Microsoft empowers these visionaries with AI solutions, simplified cloud and data management, and trustworthy, responsible AI. And when you're in the NBA, you have your own hurdles to face. In this segment, we explore the challenges faced by teams or star players and how they can turn things around. Whatever challenge you're facing, Microsoft empowers you with the expertise to say, bring it on. Tonight, we're discussing the Denver Nuggets and their late game defense against the Memphis Grizzlies in a must-win game tonight. The Grizzlies controlled tonight's game for a little over 3 quarters. They were victimizing the weak Denver pick and roll coverage with Desmond Bane and John Morant, just getting to wherever they wanted and screening actions off of, off-ball curls for Desmond Bane, a lot of on-ball stuff for John Morant, just cutting them to pieces. The Grizzlies ran 32 ball screens, including passes in the first 3 quarters, getting 1.06 points per possession, including passes. Again, just cutting them to pieces. A lot of the same usual problems for Denver, weak ball pressure. Jokic had some really bad at the level reps in that third quarter. He had one of the most embarrassing ones I've seen from him in a while on a play where Zach Edey got a dunk where he like showed on a Ja Morant ball screen. Ja Morant just threw a swing pass and Edey just ran behind him, and Jokic just kind of started walking back, and Edey got another wide open dunk. And it looked a lot like what you've seen from Denver over the course of the last several weeks. And the Grizzlies had a 5-point lead with less than 5 minutes left. And then for that final 5 minutes, the Nuggets transformed into the same devastating clutch time team that the Nuggets had been in years past, getting stops with strong positional defense, keeping the ball in front, some smart game plan stuff. They did some switching on Ja ball screens, having Jokic sit back, critically switched back on one, and Ja ended up missing a three, going under a couple of Ja ball screens to keep the ball in front. They logged one of their best reps on a Jaren Jackson post-up. Jaren had been doing some damage from that right block, getting into the middle of the lane for his left-handed hook. They got a great rep late where Christian Brown held his ground really well. Aaron Gordon shrunk by digging down off of Ja Morant on the wing, and they just barely bothered Jaren Jackson enough to get him to miss one of those hook shots. Russell Westbrook made two massive defensive plays down the stretch. He stole a pick-and-roll pocket pass on a play Desmond Bane curled a screening action. He literally just, after he saw Desmond Bane going downhill, he peeled off of him and ran to the roll man instead, and Desmond Bane tried to throw some behind-the-back pass. It ended up being stolen by Russell Westbrook just because of some great pursuit over the top of a screen. He had another play where he challenged Zach Edey at the rim on a cut, an extra effort defensive play where he was kind of out of position. He just made an effort, got up there, and forced Edey to miss a layup. Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic, they had some really bad pick and roll reps in the third quarter. In that fourth quarter, they had a very strong pick and roll rep against Ja Morant on the right wing, where Jamal did a great job pressuring from behind. And Jokic, even though he was getting sealed, jumped over his man and got a contest on Ja Morant, forced him to rush the floater, and Josh shot the floater way long off of the backboard. It was just them competing on defense. And then on the other end, looking like the Nuggets on offense, running in transition. They got an early Jokic post up in a transition situation. They got another Jokic deep post catch off of an offensive rebound. Then we saw a bunch of that classic Jokic Murray two-man game. A couple of Jamal Murray mid-range pull-ups in the two-man game, a pocket pass to Jokic for the floater. The Nuggets closed that game on a 14-1 run. I talked about the defense. They defended 12 pick and rolls in the fourth quarter and allowed just 9 points, just 0.75 points per possession, just by doing better, by competing on the defensive end of the floor. Just a casual reminder of what made this team true contenders over the last few years. I get kind of annoyed when I watch them now because it feels like a missed opportunity. This team is so good on offense. They don't need to be some sort of all-world defensive team. They just need to be competent. They need solid game planning and solid game plan discipline. That is all they need to make a deep playoff run with the offense that they had. And here's the thing. At this point, it might be too late for them to really get their habits to where they need to be to win 4 playoff rounds. But this Nuggets team, over the last couple of games, has shown just a tiny bit of life here, just that tiny bit of hope as they head into the postseason after the Mike Malone firing. That is it for this week's course correction. Remember, Microsoft's AI solutions empower you to take bold steps and make informed decisions, sparking new ideas to help drive your business forward. With Microsoft as your trusted partner, you can navigate your journey with confidence, finding innovative solutions and reaching new possibilities. Visit Microsoft.com/challengers to learn more. One last note from that Grizzlies-Nuggets game, switching over to Memphis. Both Ja Morant and Desmond Bane were really bad down the stretch of that game. Desmond Bane tried this like weird low gather move on Russ and just turned it over even against no defensive pressure. That behind the back pass turnover to Russ, that was just a really sloppy pass, a really high risk pass in that situation. Ja Morant twice on the 2 Jokic deep seal post-ups was the guy who needed to be the guy double teaming, and he just wasn't paying attention, got lost off ball. He obviously couldn't get anything going offensively down the stretch in the ball screen game. And here's the thing. The Grizzlies have their issues with personnel. They're not big and physical enough on defense. They sorely miss a guy like Dylan Brooks on the wing. They don't have enough shooting. Their bigs all have flaws, whether it's Jaren Jackson's rebounding or Zach Edey's ability to defend in space. They have their weaknesses. But ultimately, Ja Morant and Desmond Bane, their 2 primary shot creators, just aren't nearly as good as the other stars in the Western Conference. And that's what's ultimately holding them back. As I've said many times on the show, I truly believe Ja Morant is the type of superstar that has an upside with his athleticism to get to the point where he can be one of the guys that can compete in the Western Conference. But here we are. He's 25 years old, and Ja's basically the same player he was 4 years ago. You could argue he's actually regressed a little bit. So I don't really know where Memphis goes from here, because it's one of those things where it feels somewhat like a turning point. This was the year where everything was supposed to go right for Memphis. And there for a while, it looked like it was going to. But they never could get together. Other than that win on the road in Boston and a handful of other nights this season, they couldn't put together the signature wins and the swagger that they had in years past. And again, it just seems like their stars are plateauing. Desmond Bane obviously has his certain limitations based on his talent. Ja Morant has just not been developing the way that you would expect a young player his age. It just doesn't look good for Memphis at this point as they fall to the 8th seed in the Western Conference. So big picture in the West. The Grizzlies clinch a play-in berth with the loss and the Warriors win tonight. They'll be the 8th seed no matter what. From what I understand, here's how the rest of it works. Denver and Minnesota's games on Sunday are games that they should win. Minnesota plays Utah. Even without Ant with the suspension, they should win that game if they leverage their athleticism defensively. Denver plays Houston, who, according to their last 2 games against the Clippers and Lakers, have shut down their starters for the season. So if that holds and Houston doesn't play their starters, Minnesota and Denver should win on Sunday. If they both win, Denver locks up the 4 seed no matter what happens. Denver's your 4. So that leaves the Clippers and the Warriors in their game on Sunday as the massive swing factor heading into the postseason. That game is in Golden State. I would expect the Warriors to be a slight favorite in that game. I would pick the Warriors to win that game. If Golden State wins, that pushes Minnesota all the way up to 5. And then we're going to get our rematch of the Western Conference semifinals last year with Denver holding home court over the Timberwolves. If Golden State wins, Minnesota goes to 5. Golden State goes to 6. Then we get our rematch of Warriors-Lakers from a couple years ago. That's the matchup that I'm particularly worried about. We'll talk about in a minute. Clippers would drop down to 7. They would have to beat the Grizzlies to get Houston in round 1. If the Clippers win on Sunday, so again, Denver beats Houston, Minnesota beats Utah, Clippers beat the Warriors. Then the Clippers jump all the way up to 5. They get Denver in round 1. The Wolves would jump up to 6. They'd get the Lakers. The Warriors would drop to 7 and have to beat the Grizzlies in the play-in to match up with Houston. So still a lot up in the air. I'm personally rooting for the Clippers on Sunday because I'd much rather face the Timberwolves in the first round as a Lakers fan than I would face the Warriors. The Warriors scare me for one reason. I don't think they have anybody that can really make Steph uncomfortable. He's just too fast for all of them. So even though I think the Lakers have a lot of advantages, and I would probably pick the Lakers to win that series, the Steph wild card and just him being comfortable all series is enough of a wild card to swing that either way. And so I would be nervous about that particular matchup if I was a Lakers fan. I think they can match up in terms of their defensive game planning way better with Minnesota. Minnesota is a team that struggles with indecision against those types of, aggressive defensive schemes. I think JJ Redick would prey on Anthony Edwards' playmaking deficiencies and their team deficiencies in aggregate connective playmaking. I like that matchup for the Lakers. Also, Jaden McDaniels can't guard Luka. He's just not big and strong enough for him. I just think it's a matchup that favors the Lakers better than the Warriors if they were to match up with the Lakers. So that's what I'm personally rooting for. I would imagine Denver is also rooting for the Clippers because they don't want to see the Timberwolves in round 1. So my guess is you're going to have Denver and LA rooting for the Clippers in that game. Obviously, the Warriors want to win because they want to stay out of the play-in, and the Clippers want to win because they want to stay out of the play-in. But everything will be resolved in that 12:30 Pacific time slate on Sunday. Here's the deal for the show, just so you guys know. We are not going on Sunday, but I am going with Colin Cowherd. So go to the Colin Cowherd podcast feed on Sunday evening. That's where you'll see the instant reaction to everything that went down on Sunday. I will be back on Monday morning with a reaction to the weekend's games, and then we're going to dive literally right into series previews all week long. So tons of content coming from here on out. And then once we get into the postseason, we literally go live every single night. So that's the journey from here. That's all I have for tonight. As always, I sincerely appreciate you guys for supporting me and supporting the show. We will be back on Sunday with Colin and then with this show on Monday. I will see you guys then.